dismantle their arsenals. For Kazakhstan, as Ambassador Umarov just said, there was no other choice, no other moral choice, but to relinquish nuclear weapons, dismantle nuclear weapons, destroy nuclear weapons infrastructure, because of the enormous untold suffering that these tests and these weapons brought to our people. So for 4 decades, Kazakhstan lived under the spell of nuclear horror, without being told, actually, that the dangers are horrendous for the environment and for the health. You know, how many of you know about Stalin? Yeah. He was the Soviet ruler for almost 3 decades, if not more. And it was he who decided to set up the testing site in eastern Kazakhstan on the advice of his ruthless and feared internal police chief, Lavrentiy Beria, who inspected the area and then reported to Stalin that, look, nobody lives there. We can test the weapons as we wish. But of course it wasn't true. And as we now know, 1.5 million people were affected over 4 decades of nuclear testing. And there are villages of people who were located inside the test site. They were simply told to, go out during the explosion so that they're not killed by the flying furniture or whatever, and just watch the test site outside and just duck under the duvet cover. And this was ridiculous. So we are in a very different situation now. There are more countries that have nuclear weapons. You know that India and Pakistan tested their nuclear weapons in '98, declaring to the world that they do have nuclear weapons as well. There is also a question mark over whether or not Israel has nuclear weapons, which they never deny or confirm. And of course, North Korea tested already 3 nuclear devices, including one this past February, drawing condemnation from the world, from Kazakhstan, from the United States, from everywhere, but still pursuing the nuclear weapons. So for Kazakhstan, this issue is not an issue of the past. It's an issue very much of today's and of the future. It's a question of what sort of world we want to leave to our children and their children. And that is why Kazakhstan has been so active in nuclear disarmament area over the past 22 years. And that's why President Nazarbayev has been so committed to this cause. Professor Goodman mentioned terrorism, nuclear terrorism, and the attempts by terrorist groups to acquire nuclear weapons. Of course, if that were to happen, this would be the mother of all fears. But I would like to tell you that Kazakhstan is doing a lot to prevent this from happening as well. For example, last year, President Obama, President Nazarbayev, and President Medvedev were in Seoul, South Korea, together for the Global Nuclear Security Summit. And they announced the completion of a major project done by the 3 countries to secure 800 kilograms of highly enriched uranium, which remained as residue in 200 test tunnels that the Soviet military dug into the mountain called Degilin on the former test site. It is now secure, and it is now fully safely buried underground, and there is no threat that this can be stolen or apprehended by people with bad intentions. And if you are interested, by the way, you can look at the Harvard University report, which came out just a couple of weeks ago by David Hoffman and Eben Harrell. It's online, and I think the New York Times ran a story calling this mountain the Plutonium Mountain. So if you're interested, you can look at that. This is just one example. Imagine that these are 3 countries, that 3 countries working together in the past were on the different side of the Iron Curtain, on the United States on one side and the USSR on the other side. But now, through trust, through mutual trust, and I would strongly support Ambassador Umarov in that, the three countries were able to put the mistrust behind and to work jointly to secure this material. And of course, before that, Kazakhstan withdrew all these 1,000 warheads and dismantled 100 nuclear ICBMs, etc. So it's all to say that this is not something of the past. This is going on right now. For example, the project at Degelen Mountain, it took 17 years to do that. Especially intensely, it was done over the past few years. We are in a different world. 16 years ago, the United Nations approved what is known the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty, and it opened that treaty for signing. Because it is understood by everybody that once you put a stop to nuclear weapons testing, there is this severely limits the ability of a country to develop nuclear weapons. So because they don't know how effective the weapon would be, whether it will explode in the silo or whatever. So that was one of the particular area on which the international community focused. And in the 17 years, it was opened for signing in 1996 in September, 17 years ago this month. In the 17 years, 183 countries signed the CTBT, the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty, and 159 countries ratified. So that's the the 3/4 of all the countries have now signed, and almost 90% of the countries in the world signed the treaty, and 3/4 ratified the treaty. But it still is not in force. And the reason is that there is this so-called Appendix 2, which lists all the countries that has some relevance for nuclear weapons or nuclear energy. It lists about 35 countries. And the entry into force of that treaty is conditioned on the ratification of these 35 countries. Now, of these 35 countries, 27 ratified, including 3 nuclear weapon states, recognized nuclear weapon states: Russia, the United Kingdom, and France. But there are 8 holdouts. In fact, until recently, there were 9 for many, many years, but Indonesia ratified last year. So there are now 8 countries which held back ratifying, signing, or ratifying the treaty. And the list of the countries includes basically who is who in international news right now. It's Egypt, Israel, Iran, North Korea, India, Pakistan, China, and the United States. The United States did attempt to ratify the treaty in 1999 when President Clinton was in the office, but it didn't come through. And now it's President Obama's stated intention, to bring it to ratification by the US Senate when conditions allow. Well, the 8 countries basically are looking at each other and are saying, look, I'm not going to ratify this until that country ratifies. You look at India and Pakistan, or Iran, Israel, and Egypt. They are so much entangled in political discontent, thank you, that it's almost hard to imagine if any of these toughest nuts to crack will ratify anytime soon. But that's the only way forward for the CTBT to enter into force. And it's important to remind that, again, 90% of the world has signed this treaty, 3/4 of the countries have ratified the treaty, and there's a constant stream of new ratifications every month. So there is so the world clearly has spoken that these weapons tests should be banned completely. But the treaty is not in force, and the only way for it to come in force is if these countries realize that nuclear weapons are not the ultimate guarantee of their security. and there is no need to develop nuclear weapons. And that's a message that Kazakhstan is never shy to share with the world. Professor Gutman mentioned the Iran talks in Almaty, in our largest city. 2 rounds of such talks did take place, and the participants of the talks chose Kazakhstan because Kazakhstan is such a prominent country in the whole nuclear disarmament issue, but also because Kazakhstan is looked at as an objective and unbiased partner by all the parties in the negotiation. Now, after the new Iranian president was elected, our president went to Iran for his inauguration and directly delivered that same message to the Iranian leadership that we are open for hosting another round of talks. We want you all to come, and we want you all to look at Kazakhstan's example. And that's the message our president is never shy to deliver, either to the Iranian leadership or to the North Korean leaderships, and to the leadership of all the nuclear weapon states for that matter. So the whole process of nuclear disarmament has somewhat stalled. The most significant nuclear disarmament initiative that the international community took was that treaty, CTBT treaty, 17 years ago. And ever since that time, the Conference on Disarmament at Geneva tried to put forward new treaties for the international community to sign and to make further steps. For example, the so-called fissile material cut-off treaty, which will cut off the production of any more fissile material used in the production of nuclear weapons. But the countries were really in a gridlock, in a deadlock, because again, one country says, puts forward conditions before even the agenda for the talks is approved. So the international community very much realizes that, and that's why last September the United Nations General Assembly created an open-ended working group, which now completed its work in Geneva and will present its report to the United Nations General Assembly this month. So we hopefully that this will push forward this process of further actions by the international community to basically stop this madness. But one of the things which Kazakhstan thought it could do, and our president decided to do, is to galvanize global public opinion so that the issue of nuclear disarmament is not just an issue for the governments or for the diplomats. So last year, exactly a year ago on August 29, the president of Kazakhstan launched the Atom Project, and you saw the video, you heard Ambassador Umarov speak about that, and I am going to hand over shortly to the honorary ambassador of the Atom Project, Mr. Karibek Kuyukov. But the goal is to indeed draw the attention of the global community to the situation with nuclear weapons testing, and to tell the world that this is not something in the past. This is not a thing of the past. It's very much a thing of today and of tomorrow if we don't act. So you can join the cause. I'd very much like for you to go online and to sign the petition. It's just 1 minute of your time. Doesn't cost anything, obviously, but the more voices there are under that petition, and the more voices there are globally, we will, I think, the better, the stronger the message will be. Already, people from more than 100 countries signed that petition. There is a map, you can see where they are from, and actually, your photo will be there along with all these people once you attach it to your signature. We do hope that the people realize that they need to make a stronger case for nuclear disarmament globally. Because if you need inspiration, just look into the eyes of these people. I have been there many times, I have met these people, and I cannot watch this movie without my eyes swelling. And I watched that video 100 times already. So without further, if I can introduce myself, delay, I'd like to give the floor to Karibek Kuyukov, a man of great strength, who proved to himself and to the world that the mind is stronger than the body, and you can fight for what you believe in with whatever means you can. So please welcome Mr. Kuiva.
First of all, I would like to thank all the organizers of this meeting as well as all the participants that you found time to come and listen to us. I was born in 1968 in the village of Егинда-Булак. This is an area which is located 100 kilometers away from the former Semipalatinsk test site. And this was a site that was in use for 40 years for nuclear testing.
В Советском Союзе это по инструкции им говорили, что надо выходить из домов, ложиться на землю и укрываться.
And my parents were the eyewitnesses of those nuclear mushrooms. They saw them with their own eyes, and there was an instruction given to them in the USSR that when such explosions were taking place, they had to come out of the buildings and put their face down to the ground and take cover.
Ну, это было такое огромное впечатление для людей и такая, наверное, будет, скорее всего сказать, картина. И эти люди уходили на СОП и видели, смотрели это все своими глазами.
But the sight to see was so impressive that people would just come on the hills and stand there and watch it because it was so impressive.
Когда они возвращались домой, в свои дома, они видели, что на улице валялись дохлые курицы, по улицам ходили лысые собаки.
And as they looked around, when they came back home, they looked around their houses. They could see dead chickens laying around, dogs walking around with half of their hair.
Очень много таких, в нашем районе очень много раздалось таких больных детей, от вида которых, наверное, срок падали акушеры, когда видели, когда принимали роды таких детей.
And in our district, the OBGYNs probably delivered a lot of children that would make them just faint from the sight of the baby delivered.
Я часто просыпался, когда у нас в доме начиналась трясти посуда, начиналась танцевать люстра, вот, и мы тоже выбегали на улицу. Хотя после этого было говорилось о том, что ядерные провели очередное ядерное испытание, и это испытание проводилось в мирных целях. Выброс радиации было незамечено.
And so I would often wake up as a child because the dishes were making sound in the drawers and the chandelier was shaking, and I would come out and look what was going on there. And then they would make an announcement on the radio that the peaceful testing was done, nuclear testing, and there was no release of radiation and everything went fine.
Когда первый раз казахстанский народ стал говорить об этом в 1989 году, когда вот открылось первое антиядерное движение в Семипалатинск, вот, и я еще начинал с этого движения, и когда мы приезжали Я в Америке уже третий раз, и много лет назад я тоже приезжал с этим движением. Я участвовал в митингах, протестах. Я сам лично ездил тоже на штат Невада возле вашего полигона.
And so we first started speaking up about it in Kazakhstan in 1989 when the first NGO movement was started against testing in Semipalatinsk. And this is my third time in the United States. And back then I was participating in that movement. I came to your test site in Nevada. We were participating in the protests.
Я был также и в Хиросима, Нагасаки. Я видел, какую трагедию перенесла эта страна.
I also went to Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and I saw the tragedy that that country lived through.
Я хотел просто немножко рассказать вам один случай, когда мы были возле колючей проволоки в штате Невада, и там один с племени Шушон, индеец, он встал на колени и смотрел на землю и что-то говорил.
And so I want to give you an example of how I was standing next to the barbed wire by the Nevada test site. And there was one of the local Indian tribes member who stood on his knees and he was saying something to the ground.
Когда я спросил у переводчика, о чем он говорит, когда переводчик мне сказал, что он обращается непосредственно к земле, он просил прощения у земли. Просил простить нас, людей, за то, что мы с ней сотворили.
And I asked my interpreter, what is he saying? And so the interpreter said, well, he's asking the earth for forgiveness for the harm that we inflicted to the earth.
Ну, у меня в районе очень много тоже, я говорил, что очень много семей было, которые пострадали и рождались с дефектами. Родители таких детей, конечно, стеснялись показывать и все время прятали их в домах.
And in my area where I lived, there were a lot of families who were infected. There were a lot of children that were born with birth defects, and their parents were shy. They were trying to hide them in their houses, not show them.
И я даже был знаком с одной семьей, у которого рождались дети, каждый ребенок рождался с дефектом, но глава этой семьи хотел здорового ребенка.
I know one family who kept having children, and every time they have a child, it was a child with a birth defect, but the father of the family wanted a healthy child.
Но у него все время рождались больные, и это была большая семья, 10 детей у него было.
But they kept having sick children born. They had 10 children in the family.
И через несколько лет, в данный момент, конечно, эта семья полностью умерла. Сначала один за одним стали умирать дети, потом умерли в конце концов и родители.
And in the following few years, the whole family just died out. First, the children were dying one by one, and then the parents perished.
В данный момент я являюсь почетным послом проекта «Атома», и, как я уже говорил, что я бы тоже хотел попросить вас и не только подписать петицию, но и рассказать всем, наверное, об этом сайте, и чтобы вы дали свои голоса, наверное, и мы могли бы построить большой новый мир, мир без ядерного оружия.
And today I'm representing the Atom Project as the Goodwill Ambassador. So I'm here to ask you to sign this petition, to tell about our projects to everybody, and to share the site, to participate.
И там вот выставлены мои работы, там есть портреты вот тех людей, которые живут возле Семипалатинска, которые родились вот такими, какими они родились. Но они не могут сказать и не могут крикнуть на весь мир о том, к чему приводят эти испытания.
And in the room next door you will see my artwork. Some of it is the portraits of people from Semipalatinsk. They don't have the voice. They cannot tell the world about what they suffer. So I'm representing them with this work.
Я вот хотела, наверное, показать вам, наверное, крик души этих людей.
So my intention was to express the screaming of their souls to you.
Ну и хотел бы сказать, что Америка это великая страна, где живет великий народ. У вас живут постоянно великие президенты.
So I'm here in the U.S. and you're a great country with a great people, with a great presidents.
Я думаю, что в будущем вы тоже станете великими людьми. И я хотел бы пожелать, чтобы вы творили великие дела, но чтобы уже потом ваши потомки были благодарны вам за ваши великие дела.
And in the future, I think all of you will become great in their own way. And so, being great people, each one of you, I hope that your children and grandchildren will be proud of the great things that you have done.
Я, конечно, прошу прощения, я уже третий раз в Америке, но еще не могу говорить на вашем языке, на английском. Я надеюсь, что в следующий раз, когда я приеду опять в Америку, и Америка станет, как Казахстан, полностью откажется, как мы откажемся от ядерного оружия, и тогда я смогу, наверное, с вами общаться без переводчика.
And I apologize, this is my third time in the United States, but I can still not speak your language, and I hope that the next time I come here, the US is going to be like Kazakhstan, nuclear-free, and at that time, hopefully I will be speaking to you in English without an interpreter.
Желаю всем счастья, здоровья, успеха и спокойствия вашим семьям.
I wish you all happiness, health, and peace to your families, and great success. I just want to say that you're not clapping me, you're clapping those people who are fighting for the future without nuclear weapons.
So we have about 15 minutes left, so I want to open it up for question and answer from the audience.
Free of nuclear weapons, like what exactly do we need to do? Like where do they go? I had a ghost bit, so I'm not gonna. Yeah, but like Superman took all his own arms and was doing it for the sun. Like I don't think we're planning on doing that, right? How do we get rid of nuclear?
I think that it was very clearly said by Roman Platinum about the next steps which could really bring the world to reach that. And this is that the US should ratify CTBT. This is the Comprehensive Test Ban Treaty, which actually be the first step towards stopping the production and development of nuclear weapons. I think today it's even becoming less actual to develop nuclear weapons because there are so many other types of weapons which could effectively kill people. So what we need today is the action of the Senate to ratify the CTBT and just start this process rolling. This is very important, and I think the senators actually are accountable to the people. So it's up to your action, up to your conviction to influence them to do this right thing.
If I can add